welcome to the monthly Veritas webinar. For those of you that don't know, this is the webinar that we use to summarize and overlook the monthly topic that we've been discussing. And this month was all around making up your mind. The topic of making up your mind was all around how do we maintain a healthy mind and mindset to help us keep focused, motivated, and productive in both our professional and personal lives. So a lot of the time when we're talking about health, when we're talking about well-being, we refer to a lot of physical things. But this month we really wanted to take a chance to focus on mental health, and in particular, as I said, the health of our mind. Not so much the brain, but our mind. How do we develop good thinking habits? How do we refresh the mind? And how do we make sure we're bringing our best mind and mindset, or what we might know as an attitude, to work, to our personal lives, to all the situations we find ourselves in? So first blog of the month provided by Abby, and it focused all around the importance of exercising your mind. So this is how to develop strong mindsets and strong attitudes. And it created this idea that the mind is much like a physical muscle. The more we exercise it, the more we challenge it, the stronger and more capable it becomes. Of course, just like our physical muscles, we need to give it time to recoup. But Abby was providing us with some great insights as to what are some of the key exercises or little skills we can do in order to grow our mind and mindset. So we need to work on it, and it doesn't happen overnight. That was one of the key points that Abby was making as well. So we need to develop a strong routine that prioritizes and puts in place time to exercise our mind. We need to create what we call here a learning zone and performance zone. So those of you that have probably tuned in or may have tuned in to previous webinars would have heard us talk about the learning zone and performing zone before. The learning zone is a time or space where we allow ourselves to learn new things and to expect mistakes to happen. We can't develop a new skill, we can't develop a new mindset, approach, or anything without first failing or with the opportunity of failure. So we need to create these instances, these moments in time where we don't judge ourselves on whether we get it right or wrong, but what we learn during that time to help us get better. Then we've also got performance zone. And this is once we've acquired a skill, this is when things become more important. This is when we need to be at our best. This is where we expect mistakes to be minimized and performance to go up. So the importance of having a learning zone when it comes to developing our mind or growing our mindset, making decisions, making our mind up, is that we need to practice things before expecting to be able to execute it when we add things like pressure and stress and time poorness and those issues as well. So it's important to make time during the day or during your week to practice good mind exercises. We talked a little bit about that later in the month, and I'll get to what some of those little techniques and strategies can be a bit later on in this webinar. But of course, like physical muscles as well, once we train them, we need some time to recover. The mental toughness, the resilience, the attitudinal efficiency that we might develop through those mind exercises won't be realized until we've given ourselves a chance to then recover and relax. So much like our physical muscles, when we go to the gym, we feel tired, we're breaking down the muscle fibers. We then need time to relax and to refuel in order for that benefit to then be realized. Muscle to come back even stronger and better as well. So tip one or takeaway one from Abby's blog at the beginning of the month was that we need to set ourselves up for success by understanding that much like we do physical exercise, if we want to have a mentally fit mind, one that is, as I said before, attitudinally efficient, it doesn't just blame the situation for how we're feeling, but look at how our attitude is impacting our view and behavior towards a situation. To build resilience, so how can we be flexible and adaptable to stressors? How can we keep going when things seem tough, stay aligned to our purpose? And obviously mental toughness as well. How can we reduce the impact of our emotions when things like stress and pressure come along so that we stay logical and rational as well? So create time, dedicated time where we are willing to practice these things. And we'll get to those techniques a bit later on. We're willing to practice them, prioritize practicing them, prioritize being willing to make mistakes during practice to develop those skills as well. So treat your brain like any other physical muscle that you have. Second, in the addition of creating better minds or better mindset is understanding the impact that our emotions have on our mindsets and on our view of the world and the situations that we place ourselves in. So this is really looking at and acknowledging the fact that we as humans, our mind and our thoughts control our perception of the world. Our attitude towards something will dictate whether we think it's silly, good, bad, positive, and other opinionated points of view as well. But there's some 4 big ones for you there as well. But what we need to realize, and what is sometimes hard for us to do, particularly when emotions are in place, is that our thoughts are not facts. They are, just like I called them before, opinions. Yeah. So I could think something, but that doesn't make it real. But what we can tend to do as humans to help us make sense of the world, to help justify, give us confidence in the actions and mindset that we have, is that we treat our thoughts as facts rather than opinion. So we form opinions or attitudes of certain things, inadvertently consider them facts without any tangible evidence. So take a moment now to think about what are some of the things you've gone through today. What are some of the attitudes you've taken to certain events prior to even being engaged with them? One might be that this meeting I'm about to go into is a waste of time. What tangible evidence did you have that that was going to be the case? Or was it an opinion that you had? And then once you've had a chance to reflect on that, think about then what transposed in regards to your behaviors in that meeting or in that event. Were they positive and contributive behaviors? Did you contribute positively to that meeting? Or did you withdraw and look at all the things that were a waste of time, or this person's an idiot, or whatever it might have been? So, another example of that, I help you really try and dispose the difference between a fact and opinion. A fact is that the world revolves around the sun. We know this because from studying space and tracking data, scientists have confirmed, and there is no room for subjectivity. We know that as a fact. An opinion, on the other hand, would be that sunny weather is the best kind of weather. This is subjective. Some people might love the sun. Some people may prefer rain. Some people may need the rain for their livelihoods, farmers, etc., and therefore have a positive opinion of wet weather. Yeah. Our own opinion of whether sunny weather can change as well. The earth will always revolve around the sun every single day, every single minute, every single second. Our opinion of the weather might change. We might want a rainy day if we've got lots of housework or we've got some study to do. We will prefer to have sunny weather when we've got to be out and about or going to a party or a lunch. So facts don't change. Facts are not subjective. Facts are based on data. Our opinions can change. Our opinions of people can change. Just because we think someone's a bad person doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. And how many times have we thought preemptively or had an opinion of someone that they are not a nice person, that they're not like us, and then when we actually take the time to engage with them, our opinion changes. Facts can't change. Opinions can change. So although the weather and earth example is a very basic one, we're all doing this consciously throughout the day and in a variety of different areas. And sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't cause us any issues. However, when we start to have an opinion of our situation where we become trapped, or that the one solution we have is not going to produce a positive outcome for us, that is where considering opinion as facts can really start to deteriorate our ability to remain focused, to think productively, remain motivated, and be productive, obviously, off the back of that as well. So in particular, when stress or other emotions, and including setbacks, pop up, is when our opinions can start to really deteriorate our ability to focus and our ability to think positively through situations. So, and as I mentioned before, it can start to trap us, we can start to feel stuck, and we don't see the alternatives. And we can become disempowered as well when we consider our opinion as a fact. We've got control of our opinion. We can change our opinion. We can't change a fact. So I know I'm spending a lot of time talking around this, but it's really important that we tune in with ourselves when we become stressed, when we become disheartened, when we become angry at someone, and look not just at what they're bringing to this situation, but what am I bringing? What am I considering a fact that's actually opinion? What attitude or opinion did I maybe bring in preemptively to this situation, which is producing that negative emotion, producing my negative behavior? Am I contributing positively or negatively to this situation? So it's really important we consider that if we want to have a healthy mind, one that's able to be adaptive, one that's able to be mentally tough. You can't be mentally tough if you're not hopeful. You can't be mentally tough if you don't see purpose in what you're trying to succeed at. It's just simply impossible. And that's where we've got to take ownership of what opinions am I bringing? How can I shift that opinion to be one that's going to produce better outcomes for me? Because our thoughts, emotions, and actions are all interrelated. So if we bring a poor attitude, we bring a poor mindset, we drive ourselves into thinking negatively about a situation, our behaviors are going to follow. They're not going to be as wholeheartedly committed to the positive outcome or to the outcome that we're seeking as we need to get success. And a lot of what we want success in life is hard, and we need to be at our best. So if our mindset is not producing us or not leading us to our best behaviors, then we're not going to have positive outcomes as well. Part of the challenge, though, in changing an opinion is admitting our fallibility or admitting our own fault or our own responsibility in a situation, and that we might have made things worse or brought a negative start to the situation as well. And this can be where it starts to interrelate with our ego. Yeah, it can be damaging to our ego to admit when we're wrong, and it can be damaging to our ego when we need to admit that we need help from someone else or that we need help in general. Now, whether or not you think you've got a big ego or not, the reality is we've all got an ego. We've all got some level of confidence, some level of pride in ourselves. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have the confidence to stand up out of a chair. So you may not be necessarily an egotistical person or a person with a big ego, but your ego will challenge you and prevent you, or at least make it harder for you to change an opinion as well. So one of the key factors in creating a healthy mindset is the ability to stop and own our ego as well. And do this with a bit of time traveling, you know? What would happen if I don't change my opinion? What will happen if I don't admit I'm wrong here? What would happen in 6 months or 3 months' time? What would be the result of this situation? So you can start to try and make it a logical conversation with yourself rather than one is based on your feeling, which is driven by that ego as well. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it, and this is a key tool, and we use it a lot here at Veritas with either clients or groups as well, is FARPsing. Is stopping and making sure that we're taking a big FARPs. Yeah? So that is stopping and checking in with our mindset and creating attitudinal efficiency through flexibility, ensuring that you're taking the time to look for an alternative perspective or concept. This is looking at what other options can I bring, or mindsets or other ways of looking at this situation are there. What would happen if I was to bring that mindset, that attitude, or that approach to this situation or task? The second is adaptability, calling out our own stubbornness. And this is where I was going with the ego stuff as well. Yeah. Be willing and curious about other people's opinion, not taking it on wholeheartedly without question, but rather than judging someone else's a differing opinion to your own as simply wrong because you're always right, or because your ego is telling you that if I admit that they're right, then I must be wrong. Rather than approaching that opinion with judgment, approach it with curiosity. Educate yourself on where their opinion has come from. What pieces of data, what facts around the situation are they focusing on that has created the different mindset or the different approach? And then think about what would happen if you onboarded that. Be curious, be willing to learn and broaden your horizons, broaden your perspective to see an alternative way through. One that might be more efficient, one that might offer a positive outcome where yours won't. Make sure you're doing that. Be adaptive. Check in with yourself and being realistic. Are you seeing things the way they truly are, or are you blowing them out of proportion? Or if everyone else around you is panicking, are you not taking the situation seriously enough? So stop and create a scale. Be realistic. At the bottom of the scale, the least impactful might be forgetting your lunch at work. At the most impactful or the most negative potential outcome is death or the harbour bridge falling down. Where does this situation sit on that continuum? And fill in that continuum from both ends The more thorough you are with that continuum, the more easy you are to place this task, place this situation realistically on that continuum as well. And that can be a really good grounding exercise as well. Positive. Are you making space for the positives as well? We speak a lot of Veritas around the idea of positive stress. That the stress is our internal perception that our capabilities won't meet our demands. So by seeing through a task that brings us stress, by succeeding at something that challenges us, we're actually achieving two things. We're either increasing our capabilities or we are increasing our perception of our capabilities for next time we come in contact with this task or situation, but also have positive outcomes for our confidence as well. So we've got the ability to grow through stress as well. There is ability for positive in every situation that we face and every task that we come across. Are you stopping and making space to realize those positives? Or are you just focusing on the negative emotion, the distress that's going to be caused to be going through this? Are we being solution focused? So a lot of the time when we're faced with tasks or problems and it all becomes overwhelming, it's because we can be what we call problem focused. We're focusing on the cause of the problem or the potential outcome of the problem. These two factors are out of our control. The problem or task already exists. So identifying what the source of the task was at this point, it isn't going to solve it. It might just give you someone to blame, but you've still got the work to get through. You've still got the situation to unpack. The potential negative outcomes are always going to be there. Identifying the worst possible scenario of this all, look, it's going to give you something to worry about, but it's not going to make the situation go away. It's most important that we come back to the solution. What can I control in this situation? And what is the most important next step for me? This is an empowering mindset to have. This is one that focuses on what we can control so we can move forward through it. It helps us focus on what we can do, not on what other people are thinking or what's happened in the past. It is more empowering than a problem-focused mindset. So a way to challenge our ego, a way to disrupt an opinionated thought which is turned into fact is to stop and fast or to time travel as well. What happens if I don't change this opinion of this situation? But FARPS is an incredibly powerful tool to help us be what we call attitudinally efficient and make sure we're onboarding the best mindset, that we're not taking opinion into fact so we can remain flexible, move through those issues, through those tasks, and onboard the most productive and positive mindset we possibly can. Catherine then spoke about training the brain. So this is where we looked more specifically at what are the 12 sort of poor thinking habits, or what we call in the psychological world dysfunctional thinking habits that exist and can be interruptive to us having the most positive mindset. So Catherine introduced these thinking styles and actually provided you a link, a one-page link to what the 12 different thinking styles are. And I encourage you all to click on that link and identify them. Some of the main ones that, I work with and I'm also a victim of doing is catastrophizing. So if we think back at FARPS, which I spoke about 30 seconds ago, being realistic and losing grip on reality. This problem I've got is it just grows and grows, and I detach from reality as to what the actual potential negative outcome and impact of this situation is. Black and white thinking, what we call all or nothing thinking, light switch thinking, on-off thinking. Sometimes we fall into the trap of only seeing two potential outcomes. Yep, either 100% correct or nothing at all. I either get an A plus on the assessment or I fail. I either run a 30-second personal best or I fail at the time trial. They're just a couple of examples that came up at the top of my head, but there's a lot of ways where we sometimes trap ourselves into thinking there's only two possible outcomes, and they generally sit at the opposite end of the continuum. This can create a lot of pressure, right? Because it's either right and we get it perfect, or we put one foot out of line and it's a failure, it's completely wrong. That creates pretty high stakes for ourselves. So what we need to challenge ourselves with black and white thinking is to see all the possible outcomes that actually sit on that continuum. What is the grey that sits between the black and white thinking? What is the dimmer that sits on the light switch? So it's not just on and off, but it's at different shades. All those things as well. The other one that I see quite often is fortune telling as well. I've got a problem in the future, a potential problem in the future, sorry, and therefore it's a problem for me now. We worry about what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? Yes, we've got to be aware and we've got to be prepared for that, but it's when that thinking then starts to dominate and we create a problem for ourselves which doesn't exist yet, and or we create a problem that is impacting us now that hasn't started yet. And we focus more on the future problem rather than what we're doing now to avoid the problem as well. Much better to avoid a problem than have to react to a problem as well. So we can take this potential negative outcome that could come in the future and we insert it into our lives now. And it can create a lot of doom and gloom. But as I mentioned before, there's about 12 or so of these unhelpful thinking styles or dysfunctional thoughts which can derail our positive thinking as well. And part of training your brain is recognizing which one of these am I particularly susceptible to? When do they usually occur? What types of triggers lead me to fortune tell, lead me to catastrophize? And how do I respond to them? Do I respond positively or do I respond negatively? And if it's negatively, then it's about a building awareness to these things as well. And FARPsing can help you do that. Yeah? FARPsing can help you disrupt these 12 dysfunctional thinking styles. So I'd probably encourage you to maybe read and go and download the 12 dysfunctional thinking styles, identify which one you might be susceptible to and owning that, just be curious, don't be judgmental, no right or wrong, we all fall into these traps. Then run through a bit of a FARPS with each one of those dysfunctional thinking styles. So you create this plan to disrupt the unhelpful thinking styles and re-onboard the more positive ones. Re-onboard the ones that are going to lead to the behaviors you need to exhibit to achieve success through this situation as well. Finally, we came to memory. Now, how we train our brain in regards to the exercises that Abby spoke to and how we build memory are two of the same things. Yep, training the memory, exercising the brain are two of the same things as well. So Abby set us up with how we can set a routine to insert these exercises. Then at the end of the month, we spoke more about what these actual exercises are. I'll leave you in suspense for one more minute because we'll get to the exercises once we first speak about memory as well. And it was important to speak about memory because what good are the strategies, FARPsing, understanding the 12 dysfunctional thinking styles if we can't remember them? Yeah, it's good to have a good level of memory as well. What can disrupt memory? Obviously, cognitive issues can disrupt memory, but what can disrupt memory from a habitual or from a self sort of imposed issue is taking on too much. Often we hear people coming in and saying, "Oh, I feel like my memory's going." And we ask, "How's life been?" or etc. And they go, "Oh, really stressful. Never been busier. I've never been busier, but I've never been more forgetful." There is a link between being stressful and being short-term memory loss because we're not taking the time to absorb information appropriately and store it before moving on to the next thing. And or we're trying to hold on to too many things at once. Short-term memory, the data and the science shows us we're good at holding up to 7 pieces of information or data at once. So if you're really stressed and really busy, acknowledge that this might be a time where your memory lowers. It's nothing to do with your brain, nothing to do with anything like that, nothing to do with your incompetency to memorize things. It's you're trying to hold on to too much at once. So really busy, carry a notebook, go to-do lists, utilize pages, utilize writing so that you've got it written down there as a prompter and not trying to trust yourself to hold it on. Again, with the ego, try and hold on to it in your head. I'll be fine. You won't be. You'll fail at some point. Hopefully, it'll only cost you a little bit and not a lot. But a foolproof method is writing down everything as well. Today, I've been speaking to obviously more than 7 different things, so I wrote things down as well. Really important to be doing that. So, how do we set ourselves up for good memory? Make sure you're in the right mind space. When you're trying to learn something, make sure it's quiet. Make sure you're not trying to multitask. Do those things like that. Then chunk it. Categorize the bits that you're trying to learn as well. If you can only hold on to 7 things and you're trying to learn 12 things, what are the relationships that can help you categorize those down to a maximum of 7 things? So you're trying to remember a series of numbers or a code. Create one number out of it. So rather than remembering 7, 8, 9 different numbers, you're remembering one big number or what we call a chunk of information as well. That is how we're best holding on to it. The actual skills that you can use to exercise the brain, to create better capacity in your short-term memory, although you still, you're always playing with fire if you try and hold on to 7 bits of information as well. There are 101 different train your brain exercises on apps All of them are doing the same thing. They're asking you to retain information, to recall information, to absorb information, to use information in a different way. They're all fantastic. Use one of them. You don't have to pay for one, although if you pay for them, I'm assuming probably most of them let you track your progress, which is really good, so you can reflect back on your skills developing. But you want to be in situations that call on you to utilize your memory, to retain information, to call on information, to absorb and use information in a new way. Read things that challenge you, read things that you find hard to understand. Again, create a learning zone by reading a book that challenges you literacy wise and also knowledge wise. Have conversations around things that you're not versed in as well. Take the time to do those exercises on those apps as well. Take time to recover. Do meditation, do mindfulness so that it allows you to absorb the day and hit pause rather than building momentum through your day as well and taking one attitude from one area into another. A bout of mindfulness can help us just hit pause, refresh, and come again. So there's some little tips in regards to exercising your brain and training your brain so that you can have the best mindset to make your mind up. Retain focus, retain motivation, retain productivity by reflecting and training your brain to absorb new things, training your brain to recall information more efficiently. And then from a more emotional point of view, utilizing FARPs to understand when you might be bringing a dysfunctional thinking style or an unhelpful thinking style to the situation, to the task that you're engaged in. Because as we've always mentioned, pretty much every single webinar we have, our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are interrelated. So if we bring a negative attitude, we will think less efficiently and our behaviors will not be as positive as possible. We'll be not driven to success as much as needed as well. And to weave in a little bit of leadership right at the end as well. If you're a leader or a manager, you don't have time or the luxury to bring a negative attitude to meetings, to situations, to tasks. As a manager or leader, obviously you need to be strategic. You also need to be the cheerleader. And if you're not energized and positive about what your team is doing, then your people aren't going to be energized and positive about what you're doing either. And then, therefore, not going to bring their best. So you can make yourself more efficient and effective by bringing a more positive attitude. As cliche and as Hollywood as that sounds, you bringing a more positive, energized attitude to a situation will make it more efficient and effective. That's it for April. May, we're talking about social health. We're going to be talking about a lot about strong relationships. What is social health? How do we remain socially healthy? How do we use our social connections to keep us healthy as well? So I look forward to catching you in a month. Until then, have a great month. Remember that Veritas is here to support you in any way that you need, whether that be from a performance and or mental health point of view. But like I said, I look forward to catching you next month. And until then, see you next time.